Hello, everyone. It's St. Patrick's Day, and today we're kicking off our first planner interview where we're trying to spotlight and highlight planners in the St. Louis area. I'm joined today by local St. Louis area planner Colleen Durfee. And Colleen, tell us a little bit about what you do and where you work, and
Yeah,
give us a little bit of an idea as far as what it actually means to be doing the work that you're doing right now.
sure. So I work for SWT Design. We are an urban planning, landscape architecture, and urban design firm. It's sort of a full service, all kinds of planning and design oriented kind of work. And so I'm involved in a lot of different kinds of projects, whether it's from like park design to trail design, streetscape, community engagement. It's kind of, as a planner, you're sort of able to and willing to be pulled in different directions, and that's kind of what I love about what I do, because it's very creative and design oriented, but we're still thinking about how it impacts the community at large when we do our parks and trails and that kind of thing.
Cool. Sounds like you got your hands full. That's a lot of stuff. And it certainly sounds like you need a little bit of a Swiss Army knife skill set to be able to do this kind of work. You talk a little
Yeah.
bit about how you've gotten to this point professionally and how you've gotten here.
Sure. Yeah, my background, my undergraduate was in geography, which where I was at Ohio State was a very theoretical, PhD pipeline kind of program. And I was struggling with the fact that there weren't a lot of, practical fixes to the problems we were, critiquing in the field. And planning was kind of my natural foray into the practice of understanding how we interact in the spaces around us and how the spaces that we're in can make us feel comfortable, uncomfortable, welcome, excited, etc. So planning kind of exposed me to what we can do better in that field, and I ended up focusing on disaster recovery and hazard mitigation planning at UNC in Chapel Hill. And while that seems very niche, once I left, I realized that every community, regardless of whether they have gone through or will go through some kind of natural disaster, should be planning to kinds of resiliencies withstand any kind of shock, which is the point of disaster recovery and hazard mitigation planning. It impacts the finances of a community, the physical environment, the community, whether they're coming in or out, the growth, etc. So that's kind of what I've carried through to my work in St. Louis, where I started out in the public sector as the zoning administrator for University City. And then I transitioned into the private sector as a transportation planner in an engineering firm. And now I think I found sort of the sweet spot of, the more creative design side of things at SWT, but we're still oriented around, how do we practically implement a lot of the projects that we're working on, and how do we have a real impact going forward and make sure that the communities want to implement what we're presenting to them. So it's sort of a workaround kind of thing, but in general the theme, I guess, has always been how people interact with the built environment, interact with the natural environment, and how that's happened over time, and how that carries forward as a legacy going forward.
Very cool. Very good stuff. Can you talk a little bit about some of the projects that either you're working on now or things that you've recently completed, as long as you're able to talk about them, of course?
Yes, we so there's a couple projects I thought I could highlight here. What SWT, is kind of known for in a lot of fields is the park design and the trail design work that we do. So we're currently working with a community in North County, Blackjack, and they have a small park that we're helping them redesign and come up with a concept plan, and then we'll eventually help them apply for a parks grant to get the funding they need to start implementing it. So that's been really exciting to work with the park board and do design charrettes internally and with that team. And we, on the more technical side, we're helping Crestwood develop a landscape code that helps them, promote tree preservation and focuses on Watson Road, which is a new like redevelopment area. And, how do we mitigate the urban heat island through the landscape code and think about, the long-term, tree growth and how we preserve that over time. So one's a very design oriented one is design, but it's thinking about how regulation influences design. So those are some of the two that I'm working on right now.
That's awesome. It sounds like very challenging and rewarding type of work. for sure.
Mhm.
Before we go today, can you tell us a little bit something about yourself? Maybe something that people don't know or wouldn't expect if they already know you.
Sure. So recently, and I guess in the last year or so, I've gotten really into looking on Craigslist and Goodwill and Facebook Marketplace for really cheap furniture. Is, well made. It's not, all veneer, but it's like solid wood. And I've been sanding everything down and refinishing it. And so I have like several pieces in the house of that kind of work, some failures, some successes, but that's been a fun weekend project for me.
That's really cool. Are you doing just like the wood refinishing and painting, or are you doing like upholstery kind of stuff too?
Not upholstery yet. Oh man, that's a whole different world. I think I need different tools, but we have some chairs that are kind of like family heirlooms that really do need to be reupholstered. So that's actually on my list of things to do this week, is call up an upholsterer in St. Louis and see what they can do for us. But it's fun.
Well, that's awesome. My hat's off to you. I'm not the kind of person who's afraid of needles, but upholstery needles do in fact scare me. Yeah, exactly. So thank you so
Yeah.
much for taking some time to talk with all of us today. And we wish you nothing but the best personally, professionally, and everything else. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Tom. It's been a pleasure.